when you put out good words, what happens? I like to look at my life like an amplifier, so a microphone. What I'm putting out into the world like a microphone is going to go out. And if you're not doing that with an intelligence of consciousness that it's going to create more of that, then it's dangerous, actually. When my dad died, I wanted to put out vibrations of the peace, love, joy, happiness, and prosperity. I like to look at life like a gas pedal. You know, when you're driving your camper van, if you're gonna put some gas down, love is the gas that I'm interested in putting out. Because when it goes out, it creates more of it. And I think it's really not that complicated. Actually, it's quite simple. You know, do good and good is done to you.
To be alive with so much love.
What do people say to you that the music do to them?
There was many people actually at the Bruce Lipton event that came up to me that were actually chronically suffering from, for instance, back pain, and they had no more back pain. There was 3 people like that at that event. There were some people that have experienced suicides and they've never told anyone. They came up to me to tell me for the first time publicly, you know, admitting to someone else other than within their family that that has happened to them.
I have been looking so much forward to this the last 2 weeks since I met this amazing guy in front of me. The world today is crazy and there's so much going on. And I can truly feel that a special task for me right now in my life is to come from the head and down to the heart. I want to learn to lead from my heart, and I know that this unique person sitting in front of me can help me do that, because I've already experienced it. I've listened to his music, I have been singing with him, I have been to workshops with him. So Paul Luftenegger is a musician that creates music to expand our consciousness and for more peace and love here in the world. He have created not less than 8 albums for the last 10 years. He have a doctorate degree in ministry. He have been invited as a special guest for example, Louise Hay's 90th birthday, and played conscious expanding music for UN gatherings all around the globe. And of course, he have been traveling around, and right now he's actually on this healing tour around the world, where we had the pleasure to first enjoy him together with Bruce Lipton, and again for a whole day workshop with an amazing Dane called Gitte this weekend. So welcome to my little home on wheel here, Paul. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you so much. This is a very cool setup, everyone. Yeah. I love it. We're surrounded by the most beautiful harbour, and it's lightly raining. Yeah.
I love that the temperature is falling, because now I have an excuse to fire up the fireplace in the van. I can sit in here when it's cold and windy and rainy, and it will be that for the next 4 or 5 months here in Copenhagen, where we are right now.
I was just thinking about the coolness of this vehicle though, and it's a beautiful setup, and I'm thankful that I get to sort of experience this version of Copenhagen.
Building a camper van was for me like my freedom project, you can say. I couldn't imagine something more free than have everything I cared about and be able to sit right here. What do you think when you hear the word freedom, and what does freedom mean to you?
Everything. I think it's everything. I think that the world is based on freedom, and if it's not, I think it's a bit dangerous. I think that freedom is the cornerstone of, I think, every part of being a human being.
You came here to Denmark 2 weeks ago. Why did you come to Denmark?
Long story short of this sort of journey that we've been on, right before the pandemic, I actually was one of the last concerts in Copenhagen, probably about a week and a half before the world closed down. Basically came back to Copenhagen to sort of take the journey back to where I last sang, and wanted to just sort of carry on in freedom.
I know something special happened in your life that have changed your life and opened up to something.
Yeah, sure. So I always like to sort of say that my life is divided into 2 parts. So March the 6th of 2011 is sort of my big, I think, awakening, let's call it that, or awareness, maybe, where I came into sort of understanding my mission a little bit better. But on March the 6th of 2011, my father took his own life, which was a really big thing to go through. And before that, I sort of didn't really, I was in a corporate sort of idea in the way I wanted to live my life. And then, you know, I think what happened is it sort of set a reset button in my life about what mattered, what didn't matter. And I basically had an experience with God, for lack of a better, you know, making it really simple, but I had an experience with God through my grief. And I was called by God to start writing music to inspire global love and kindness around the world. And at first I sort of put the, you know, the brakes on and said, no way, are you crazy? No. And you know, really, quite frankly, I couldn't resist sort of I think just the understanding that I needed to do this. So I started to sit down at the piano and I started to write music to inspire global love and kindness from within. And, you know, just one song after the other just started to flood through, and I started to record them. And I remember sort of starting that and hitting send to the world, as you do, you know, that button on the computer where you agree to share it with the world. And my first fans actually were from Denmark, which I think is kind of interesting. And here we are 11 years later with 8 albums and a lot of wild experiences, including being invited to meet the Dalai Lama next month in India. So, I don't know, music opens doors. I think there's consciousness in music in a way that I really can't put words to, but here we are.
That made me think about that actually one of the biggest challenges is in my life right now is that I have been struggling leading and guiding myself. And I'm really interested in hearing a little bit more about how did you start, like, I think maybe coming down from your head and down in your heart for like guidance that's more, have more depth. There's so much today where we lead solely from our brain, and I truly believe that it creates a lot of challenges in the world that we simply forget our heart and love. So how have that journey been for you?
Well, that's a really big question. So I think the biggest part about everyone has to find their way. So there's my way is my way, your way is going to be your way. And if you're watching this, that's going to be your way. For me, I had an experience with grief, and I think I never really sort of understood the inner landscape, you know, the inner world, the inner garden. And I think that there comes a time in your life where you have to kind of understand that the inside creates the outside. So I think when you start looking at the geography, let's call it, of the inside, you have to figure out what's going on. And I think a lot of times people don't really take a deep dive on the inside until one day you have to sort of face it. And I think a lot of people choose not to, actually. I've met many of them. I'm sure you have, I'm sure your guests have. But there comes a time where I think if you're really honest with yourself, what do you want? And what do you dream to be true in your life? What kind of life do you want to experience? And for me, how I sort of started to sort of look at my inner life is that my heart was my compass. And if you want some things to be in your life from your heart, you have to take the risk to live them and take action on them. And I started to do this in 2011, and I've noticed, you know, I think pretty much right away that when you start to do it, it's a little bit scary to share your heart openly and to do things that your heart asks you to do. But when you do them, what happens is someone that's similar shows up. And then you experience something with someone that has sort of that same frequency or same vibration of love or interest, and you experience something with them that sort of creates an experience that you both share. And if you just start following that, you get into your head, and then you have to remember, no, go to your heart, because your head will tell you some crazy stuff, right? Like, it's full of fear. At times, I'm one of those people that has sort of a lot of fear, or have sort of the challenge of fear at times. But if you go to your heart isn't scared to just exist. And I think it goes back to the childhood, and your childhood has the heart at the center of it, and doesn't really ask permission, you know, it doesn't ask permission to be there with, I think, love. So I started to do that, and I think, you know, the best way to do that is through a spiritual practice of some sort, whether that be going for a nature walk or finding something that you love. I love music. I played music, and it started to center me into my heart much more effectively. And I think you have to find what's in your heart that inspires you, and to use it as a compass, and to live it. And not living it is if you don't live it, you're never going to experience it, really. So, yeah. And here we are.
Town, I dreamt that my love could reach out and find the hearts of all the dreamers just like me. So I'd look out my window and I'd find my star. I'd make a wish with all my heart. The one day I'd sing songs to help heal the world.
I think you played for maybe 20 seconds at the Bruce Lipton event, and I could just feel my heart started beating more. So I really think, and what I love about your music is this, that it somehow it brings my mind in a and my whole body in more relaxed state, and just start making the heart beat more, or just feel the heart more. So that's one of the things I really like. And how do you work with music, because I know it's aligned with your mission here on.
So here's the thing, that I think music's really interesting. It's a subject that I don't think people really think about. And I've said this on the stage, I'm sure you've heard me speak about this a little bit, but music is from the inside of me. And it's the one thing that goes to the outside of me and gets into the inside of another person, right? So just like a book, when people write books, those words are from the inside of someone and they go out into the world and then into the inside of someone that's reading them. So I think that music is an intelligence, if you really think about it, that sort of is a connection to a human heart to another human heart. So I think first we need to sort of understand that music isn't just some, loveliness that exists just because. I think it needs to be understood that music was someone's emotional response with intelligence in vibrational consciousness that was from the inside of a human being that then is shared with another. And I think if we start understanding music that way, I think it's an important understanding to, honor what that is. So when I write my music, I write from the first person's perspective so that my affirmation of love can then be affirmed within myself and it can go to another human heart. And I think that with that intention, it's very different because it's not without the understanding that it's the most sacred space of myself and the most sacred space of someone else. And I think that that's why my music is sort of maybe I would even say it's been called a new genre, perhaps, healing conscious music. And I'm just sort of starting to understand it more and more, because even as you've kind of witnessed, is when people experience it, it's not like something that they've had before. And a lot of people come up to me afterwards and they sort of say things to me that blow my mind, really. And it's just that there's a connection to something greater than yourself. And it's, call that God, the universe, source, spirit, but something that's divinely intelligent, that's created life. And there's a lot of that in what I do. So.
And for example, what do you experience? What do people say to you that the music do to them?
There's a lot of things. There was many people actually at the Bruce Lipton event that came up to me that were actually chronically suffering from, for instance, back pain, and they had no more back pain. Or there was 3 people like that at that event. There were some people that have experienced suicides and they've never told anyone. They came up to me to tell me for the first time publicly, admitting to someone else other than within their family that has happened to them. In Denmark, mostly it's women that actually came up to me and their mothers actually took their own life. And that's actually more unique for me. And I've connected people that have never talked about that with each other so that they could have a group discussion. And all of them thanked me actually for connecting them to other people that have experienced a mother taking her own life. So there's things like that happen that you can't, I don't know how you explain that really. It's divine consciousness sort of coming together and, healing. So that happens a lot.
There are so many fantastic aspects of music. A memory came to me that a short story was that first time I drove away in my van, I had the idea, only work with myself from within and silent everything around. So I took out the stereo from the van, so no music at all, and I felt really, really lonely. And it was important, and I had to go through this phase, isolating myself from everyone and everywhere, so no one knew where I was in the world. But something I experienced when I came home, and one of the first upgrades, actually I think it was the first upgrade I did to the van when I came home, was to install speakers and music in the van.
Right.
Because something I've experienced is when I'm traveling around in the van alone, music can eliminate the loneliness.
Right.
I think it's so powerful with music that reduces the feeling alone. And I think unfortunately it's a topic or even maybe a big elephant in the room in the world today, people feeling lonely.
Yes.
I do it myself so much of the time. And how do you feel about that?
Well, I think you've touched on a couple of points. The first thing is that I just want to sort of touch on loneliness. It's a subject that I think keeps circling around. I actually think here in Copenhagen and in Denmark, we were just with someone that just wrote a book called Loneliness. And we were at what they call a saloon. I think you called it a saloon here. The translation sometimes doesn't always, it's interesting, but we were at the saloon with this author about this corporate conversation about loneliness in the workplace. And it's a very interesting subject because I think people don't really know how to talk about loneliness. And I think we're sort of at a precipice of understanding that a lot of people are lonely, and more so than ever. And why is that, right? Good question to sort of contemplate. I think people are lonely because there's so much noise in the world. And I think that through a computer or through an Instagram, there isn't that connection with the soul. And it was really interesting being in a conversation with people about, I think, just reestablishing a connection from heart to heart with each other in person. And I think COVID's challenged a lot of people not getting together or being scared of each other, or, those things are really big conversations. So I think people have suffered with a lot of loneliness through COVID. But I think we're at that time to understand that perhaps we need to sort of revisit being human and what does that truly mean. And it's to really have, connections with each other and building community again, and perhaps even doing it even better than we did before COVID. And I think that loneliness is a really good talking point to start discussing in small community groups perhaps, or in family situations. And I think having an honest conversation about maybe if you are lonely, and how do you maybe look at that, or how do you address not being lonely. And then to shift over to music, one of my favorite things to do after I write an album is to put it in the car, put it in the stereo system of the car, and go for a really good drive and listen to it for the first time. And I love that more than anything, because I think when you're sort of in a car moving around, you create a landscape of sound, and I love doing that. It's one of my favorite things to do, is listening to music in cars, road trips,
Totally agree. I have been driving around and singing with you. Actually, it made me think that I think the challenge today is that, or at least for myself, is that having this place where you feel safe, that I'm not glad to say it, but in the public space, it's actually sometimes hard to find spots where you really feel safe. And I think that when you go in a van, the subconscious mind, that's taking care of driving the car, and you're in a safe place, no one can hear you, and then putting music on and singing and yelling and getting all the emotions maybe from a whole day that just like being put onto the carpet, get them out.
Definitely. I think that you having this, even just this van, this camper van, is that what you call it, a camper van?
Yeah.
Caravan? It's really a beautiful opportunity, I think, to sort of, just see nature around you too. I love how, we're sitting here, but I mean, the world is going on around us, and I love how nature, birds flying by, and I think that there's something about, I just think that there's something about what you're doing here that's really cool, and I look forward to sort of seeing what you're going to do with other people that will be sitting here. I'm sort of your inaugural, I think, guest, I guess, but I think that you're onto something really special, and I think that there's something about being in the confines of something like this to share something from the heart and the soul, and every setting wherever you are when you record will be a different setting with different nature around you, and I like that you're sharing it with the world. It's cool.
Nature is the best healing.
Yeah.
It's maybe next to love.
Yeah. Well, nature, I will say nature is the one thing, after my dad died, that was the one thing, I couldn't really deal with the world much, but I remember we used to go for walks every day, and I would do that religiously every day and just go for a good hour to 2 hour walk. And the thing I like about nature, it doesn't judge you. Human beings judge you. Nature reminds us, and we are a part of nature, to just dissolve judgment. And I think in my healing, I think a lot of people heal in nature because it doesn't really need anything. It just exists. It's a balance. If you're around nature, it doesn't really ask anything of you. It just accepts you as you are. And I think that's very healing, because the world, unfortunately, human beings cast a lot of judgment, and I'm not saying I'm immune from that, but we all judge each other. It's part of being human. But I think the more you sort of start to recognize what judgment is, you sort of release it. And nature, I think, reminds us of letting go of that.
Right now it sounds like the seagull reminding, or at least maybe it's to look out and see, if I should be an animal, either a dolphin or a bird, it's just like, wow, that must be fantastic, being free and fly around.
I think the thing that I've learned about, what I do really is, how do you be the highest self? How do you be your highest self? And I think it takes the heart, I think it takes the soul, and it takes understanding the inner geography. And when you understand the inside creates the outside, when you start, I think, actively creating and co-creating your life with an understanding that if you want some of the dreams to come true, you have to use what you have. And I think, for instance, when I was a child, I used to, being sensitive is a good topic of conversation. I think as men, we are often told to be strong, don't cry, those silly, really silly ways that we've been structured to be men. I think that the world is changing where men don't need to be that any longer. In fact, it's contrary to, I think, the way that you thrive. You have to be imperfect, and it's okay to have emotions. It's an intelligence, right? And I think that we're at this precipice of understanding something in our human, I think, evolution, let's call it, where we're not going to do that any longer. And men are tired of it. It won't work any longer. So boys do cry, boys do have emotion, men do cry, men have emotion. And I think that what really supports women, in my opinion, is actually men that are sensitive to what emotion truly is, and not to bypass, being depressed or to bypass being upset. And I think you serve the world far greater by being imperfect and working through how to maybe become stronger or more skilled in certain areas of intelligence by understanding that the emotional bandwidth is from 0 to 100, and you have to understand all of the colors and tapestries, and that actually is intelligent. So I think that we're in this leaping forward in evolution, and I think that it's exciting to sort of be able to talk about it.
I heard a really interesting, I follow a guy called Aaron Apke, where he talked about this, that we have been leading, first of all, from the head, but even though on top of that, from the left side of the brain. And we really like putting people in boxes, and we also like to put a number of people. So we have this fantastic IQ, but IQ, that's like only this, but how does that help you operate in the world? Like, there are so many having a high IQ, and we know that those are maybe those struggle even the most of operating in this world. And then we have the EQ, the emotional aspect of it as well, that we can see that's really, really important as well. But he talks about the SQ, the spiritual intelligence. I think that's what's happening right now, is a shift of mind, and you can say that maybe the intelligence and the emotional is up in our head, but then what really matters, and the driving, what actually that governs all of it, I would say, is the spiritual intelligence, and that's, I believe, is found in by going down, going south in the heart, and having that as the master. I like the saying that the head is a really good servant, but really poor master.
I think one of the things that I've sort of, I've thought a lot about this, but I think that when you're a child, you're born actually in your heart, right? And I think what happens is that when you're born in your heart, and that's the science behind it, the first 7 years of your life is very important because the conscious and subconscious mind are at play, right? So you have 7 years before that starts to change. And I think human beings after 7 start to actually do what they're told by societal standards, right? So I think what happens is you start to actually sort of detach the heart and the mind becomes more powerful. But I think what happens eventually is that the mind and the heart have to come back together. So I think the heart is, I think you're born as a child first, you know, there's a genius in that. So you're your heart first. The mind grows with the evolution of the world wherever we're at in human evolution. But then if you bring in the spiritual sort of component, I think it actually integrates the heart and the mind together to work as one. So having studied world religions, it's very interesting because if you study any of the world religions, really the cornerstone of each religion is very similar. It's to spiritually become whole. And it's usually pretty much on the universal laws, which is, you know, when you give, you receive. You know, the golden rule, if you use it well, it actually is, you know, what you reap, you sow. And I think it's a very interesting thing to start to look at because I think a lot of people don't do that. And the people that do it, it's very obvious when you look at their life, the way that they experience happiness and perhaps even call it blissfulness. But there's something blissful about doing good or doing right. And when you do that, it comes back to you. And I think, you know, we're sitting here today. The only reason why we're sitting here today is because I follow my heart. That's the truth, right? And the truth is also that we're sitting here because you followed your heart. What happens when we do that? And that's a really big question I'm interested in. So I think that we leap forward into our evolution in a very different space when we're in heart coherence with our mind and our intelligence. And I think that we're living auspicious times that have been predicted by sages and saints for a very long time. So here we are.
It made me think about actually that something that helped me a lot is to take a look at the history. And even I knew, because I've seen his presentation before, but Bruce Lipton is really good at painting the picture about what have happened with humanity or here on Earth for many thousands of years, is that we have going from one pole to another, starting actually at some point living in cooperation with the nature, and then we go out and too much up in the spiritual side. We forget we have two hands and 2 feet, and then we go the other way. And right now, as I see it, and also how he points out that we are going towards finding the middle way between matter and spirituality, and with quantum mechanics, we know now that the governor of the university, we have proven that with physics, with math in the laboratory, is vibration, is consciousness.
Yeah, exactly.
It has been so heartwarming for me, like you said, that the more you go in and study religion and philosophies, it's coming from the same. It's coming from the same that all of them says that in the beginning was consciousness. Right. I like this, like step 1, 2, 3, that actually we have this beautiful loving consciousness, and from that into vibration, sound, and then light, and light being matter, what we see, or actually just frozen light. Right. And that's what's said. God spoke the word into being. Yeah. In the beginning was the logos. It's the same in all of the religions. Yeah, exactly. And that's also what, except for having fantastic feelings in me, for example, your music, is that, yes, there is something when you create music with a consciousness behind that is it's seriously the top of the pyramid, you can say, and I think that's why also music can go so deep in us, because it touches really the core of the whole universe.
Yeah, exactly. Even universe is uni, so uni means one and verse is song. It's interesting, one song, right? So it's interesting when you start looking at musical intelligence or vibrational intelligence, sound consciousness. I think that it's interesting because, in the Bible, first there was the Word, and Dr. Maya Angelou taught us that one day we will be able to measure how much power each word has, right? So when you look at the word, when you put out good words, what happens? Good words go out to the world, and then they find the good people that are interested in looking at the good words, love, peace, joy, happiness, prosperity. They connect to the word going out, and it becomes one. So I also think that if you look at hate, hostility, war, that vibration goes out and it looks for those things and then it comes back. I'm not interested in amplifying that. And I like to look at my life like an amplifier, so a microphone. What I'm putting out into the world like a microphone is going to go out. And if you're not doing that with an intelligence of consciousness that it's going to create more of that, then it's dangerous actually. So to me, if we want a more loving world, we have to be conscious and responsible. And Dr. Bruce Lipton talked about being responsible. And you can get away with not being responsible, but once you kind of know these things, you kind of are responsible to what you do put out, because it's going to affect someone else. So I think when my dad died, I wanted to put out vibrations of the peace, love, joy, happiness, and prosperity, the roots of love. And I think I like to look at life like a gas pedal. When you're driving your camper van, if you're gonna put some gas down, love is the gas that I'm interested in putting out, because when it goes out, it creates more of it. And I think it's really not that complicated. Actually, it's quite simple. Do good and good is done to you.
Oh yeah, I think me and my girlfriend had a conversation, previous Christmas, and about what we have learned this year.
Yeah.
And the learning I did was that, like you said, the outer world represents the inner world, and also the thoughts. And that actually, when I think something, I've actually heard some science person saying that thought is as real as physical things. The universe don't see any difference.
Right.
And wow, it represents the inner. When I think something not good about my girlfriend, it will be the wrong gas pedal, and I accelerate more. So this taking responsibility to take it back, why I'm in this van here, is that what sent me to the very bottom was when I realized how we mirror each other. I think actually I was reading the book Emotional Intelligence, and I was not feeling good at that point. I couldn't figure out why am I not happy. Having a successful startup really good, everyone amazed about what we were doing, but I didn't feel happy.
Right.
And then realizing, oh my God, what I'm putting out is people are receiving it. So when I go into the door in the morning at the office and not feeling good, I'm actually giving that to the others. And then I hit the bottom, and then I went to the doctor, and I'm depressed and all that. I've given everything around me the excuse for not being happy. I should exercise more, eat more healthy, be more social, more successful startup, and then just no, tried all of it, none of it helped. I'm gonna trust the Buddhists and then say happiness is to be found within.
The thing that I want to sort of just pause you on depression, because I think that this is a really important subject actually. So a lot of people are depressed, right? So here's the thing, and I've heard so many spiritual teachers talk about this, and I think it's an important point. So a lot of times people talk about depression, and yes, there's clinical depression where there's a chemical imbalance in the brain. I am very aware of that. And sometimes drugs are required for those things. I get that. But I do think that there's a conversation to be had about depression. It's really a signal in my opinion, a signal to reflect on what's causing it, where's it coming from, what is it? Is it just a state that is going to basically be there for a little bit, which is likely the case, and what's going on in it, and what is it telling you? It has a message for you. So in the spiritual identity of understanding that, I think it's an opportunity for the soul to reflect, to contemplate where one's at in life, and to figure out if there's some solutions from the heart that might actually alleviate the tension of that depression. And I think that oftentimes we don't talk about that. Depression is sort of showing up to show us something that we perhaps might not really thought about or considered, which is sort of the case for you, right? And you changed your life. I know that, grief is quite depressing, right? So I remember people telling me that I should take a pill. And I thought to myself, well, yeah, maybe. But then I thought about it and I thought, well, then I wouldn't actually feel what perhaps I need to feel to go through my grief. And I can tell you, if I took a pill to numb it, I don't think I probably would have found music, because music was my relief, right? So I think it's important to sort of be aware of, what is depressing and why are we depressed? Because I think the world creates life to find the remedy or the prayer or the solution to perhaps some of the things that we maybe haven't done so great. And depression's an emotional response to maybe some of that. Whether, if, for instance, if there's something that's not working in our ecological system, it might be depressing to look at it, but that's not going to fix it. What's going to fix it is actually taking an action towards something greater to maybe solve the problem. So I just think that, depression's an interesting conversation that I think a lot of people don't have sometimes. And I think it's great that you did something about it,
Yeah, when I'm out speaking, often I have like the graph and saying that, I'm going to draw it like this, the further you go down, just before you kill yourself, I think actually that will help you go even higher. If you just go mediocre the whole life, it's often what really hurts to get the really deep learnings. And I truly agree in what you're saying is that, we know the body. Actually, the body is the only thing that can heal itself. Yeah. Like we talked about before this, that we cannot grow a tree. We can help, we can nurse it, we can water it, but we cannot we cannot make it grow. It's itself that have to do it. It's the same when we're sick, when we're in a dis-ease, when we're not good at our body. The only thing that can help the body is ourself. It's simply not possible. So I think the answers is within, or at least that's what I've experienced. When I hear some of my friends, I have a lot of startup friends, all of them are being stressed. I think that's a pattern. But I also I really embrace it and see the good at it. When I see someone having a hard time and feeling depressed and like maybe even go down with stress and have a burnout, just like, I see the potential to light up or make the light shine even brighter, because wow, you just got served the opportunity for some really, really big learnings in life, and that can make you fly or get wings, because I have experienced myself. I hoped it wouldn't take so long time, but the wings are growing, and I'm in a place that is so much nicer than before that. So yeah, it's So let's work with the nature instead of against the nature and putting poisons all out there. No, it's all of it is like a short-term solution. The long-term solution is working in cooperation, in balance, and helping each other. And like you say, like the temple, seeing the body, our body as a holy temple that we need to take care of and nurse every single day.
That song is a really important one. It's funny, someone actually thanked me for it yesterday. I was with them yesterday, and she thanked me. I don't know how old she is. She says that she's had many birthdays, but she's an older lady that was actually at my concert, and I was with her yesterday, and she said, "Thank you so much for that song, and it's my sacred holy temple." And I just talked about it, as you know, about what is this? It's this miraculous thing that houses our soul is literally our body. And it was really and is still the first temple on the planet, in my opinion. And to treat it as such, it's a holy, holy temple. And I think a lot of people don't really look at the body as a temple, but I think like the body, the temple, like the churches were created to sort of house many bodies, but it's in divine sort of understanding that a church is really just a collective temple, a body of many souls. But the first temple is actually your body. And this is my body, and this is your body. And you get to say what happens to your body, and I get to say what happens to my body. And I think we have been on some shaky paths these last 3 years where we're not really honoring that the choice of one's body is one's own choice. And to take that away is probably the most dangerous thing that we could ever do as a human species. Your body's yours and mine is mine. And if we honor that in law, then I think we're onto something that is the cornerstone of freedom, true freedom. So
the Chinese word for crisis is wei qi.
Yeah.
Most likely you pronounce it another way, but it's wei qi. And actually it have two meanings, and one of the meaning is crisis, but at the same time the meaning is also dangerous opportunity. And so I think what we're going through now it is a crisis, but it's also a really dangerous opportunity. And we have been pushed so much on our human right. It's a human right. Nothing can overrule the human right, bodily integrity. My body, my temple, my own choice, what I do with it. And wow, it have been challenged. So let's hope that being challenged this also is an awakening, so that we will start, even though it's like still a little bit chaotic, that we will see from being pushed so much that a boat.
Oh, I like that.
When the van is done in many years, I'll build a boat as well.
Yes.
Maybe next time we go to Denmark, if you come in 5 years, we'll sit in the boat instead. But let's really hope that now we are being challenged so much on our human rights here on the planet, and it will also increase our consciousness about it. Because I truly believe that the only way we can heal and fix the challenges on this planet, that is to expand our consciousness. And how do you do that? That's getting up in the higher vibration, love, creativity, all the high vibrating feelings, getting up there, increase our consciousness. And so that leading over to you, how do you see that we heal this planet? And
Well, that's a really big question, and I don't think I have all the answers for that one, but I think that it starts with taking a good look at yourself. I think, Gandhi taught us is, be the change you wish to see, right? But I think also be the love you wish to experience. That's not said very often, but I think it's really important. And I think, really just taking responsibility for what we put out into the world. And I'm certainly not the perfect human being. I have lots of areas of opportunity and growth to do better at everything that I do. But I do try to do things to help build community where you can have a conversation. I think conversations are the most important thing we can have right now. And to really listen. People don't listen, and I think, my husband, who's sitting right here, which you can't see on camera, but his father taught him, 2 ears, one mouth. And I think you have 2 ears to listen. I also think that there's listening and there's hearing, and they're not the same thing. I think that to listen is to listen with your whole being, and to listen with your heart. That's consciousness. So are you listening when people speak? Are you really kind of allowing yourself to take in what's being said, or what emotions are there? Or are you trying to just talk? And I think you have to balance out those two. But I think you acquire wisdom from listening, truly listening, and listening with your heart. So, I don't know, that's what I do.
Then it's fantastic that you create such a beautiful music that is just like nurturing that part of...
I think we're all divinely aligned to be exactly where we are. I think there's a genius to what we know and what we don't know. I think we're all being prepared or have been prepared to be where we're at. And I think the world, is going to be probably, I think this past 3 years has given us a lot to think about. And I think you're going to see, like you had said, we've been pushed a lot. And when that tension comes, I think the relief of it is to understand that we did some things right. We definitely did some things wrong, that weren't so great. But in that, I hope and I have faith that we'll figure out maybe what we can do to be better. And I think you're starting to see that, more and more. I think this conversation is one of those things that has come out. I don't think we'd be sitting here if COVID didn't happen, right? Like, I don't know if I would have been with Bruce Lipton on the stage. And I think what's really cool is 1,000 people came together and sang a song that I wrote with the words and the intention to heal the world. I can't do that alone. You can't do that alone. But we together, when we sing together, that universe or universal song, what happens when we come together and sort of heal the world together? I think it starts with at least having the idea it's possible. Maybe it's a song,
It feels like the universe had just dumped down amazing people in front of me every single day for the last 2 weeks. So at least what I have gathered from the last 2 weeks, that's faith and hope and love. And that's a world I would like. That's the world I would like to live in. Not all this loneliness and feeling unsafe and all the low vibrating emotions. No, it's the other emotions. But it's definitely seems that's accelerating. We are getting together. Wow, it's fantastic. Light workers all over the world and coming together. It's
awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome and heartwarming.
I think that's good. I think that feels like a good way to end. Yeah? Okay. Good.